Project, yes.
So we are going to do a mock election so that everyone here can learn how ranked choice voting works. We are going to be ranking your favorite pies. So can folks here pull out a phone if you have one on you and scan this QR code here? If you are online, there will be a link in the chat so that the election will open up for you. But if you have a device on you at this moment, please go ahead and scan this QR code. If you open up your camera and hover it over the QR code, it will take you to the mock ballot. And if anyone is having issues, happy to just hop around really quick to help out folks.
Give us a minute.
So once you open up that link, just go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and then I will walk through the rest of the instructions. I see a couple of people still scanning, so I'll go ahead and wait a couple more minutes. Yeah, so open up your camera and then just hover it over the QR code. And I will let you use this one if you don't have If anyone needs help, happy to walk around. And just go ahead and hold on for one moment before you fill it out. Do you need some help?
What's your favorite? We're going to vote on the favorite pie.
Does anyone else need help?
Cherry,
Thumbs up if you're ready to go.
chocolate cream, or none of the above.
All right, I think some folks are ready over here.
We mark it yet?
Just hold on one moment and I will go over the instructions.
Well, you need to go too.
Do you need some help back there?
Yeah, maybe. We're working on it.
You might need to get closer, maybe.
Oh, right. My phone seems to be.
Got it? All right, so now what you should be seeing on your screen is a mock ballot that shows you the different rankings. So what I want you to do now is to think about what are your favorite pies. You now have the ability to rank those in your order of preference. So if you really only like the pumpkin pie, you don't have to mark any other ones. You can just say pumpkin pie is my number one all the way, and you don't care about anything else, and you can hit submit your vote. But the cool thing with the system is that you have the ability to rank more than one. So if you also really love cherry pie, you now have the ability to say that is your second choice favorite. You also want your vote to count for cherry pie. So you are able to rank them in your order of preference. Your number one, number two, number three, and so on. You don't have to vote for the ones that you don't like. I do want to make that clear. Just vote for the ones that you do really like, and then go ahead and submit your vote. And I'll give you all a couple of minutes to do that.
None of the above is your number one choice, but you have a number two choice. And I'll say it first.
I know this is very controversial, so I'll definitely call on a couple of folks right after. I was the first person to vote, and I will say Marion Barry was my number one, all the way.
That's so cool.
Put any, you don't have to put anything in.
And once you are done, if you can just give me another thumbs up so that I know. Right.
I did this one for one, but I couldn't get it there. But it did not hold, yeah. It's I'm feeling.
Yeah, we got you. There you go, right there.
Oh,
You need to.
No, that's okay.
And to the folks that are online, if you can do a little thumbs up in the chat, awesome.
And then we don't want to go right.
Okay, and then hit submit.
Okay.
All right, perfect. All right, is everyone ready to go? All right, so now we are going to look at who the winner is. But I would love to hear from folks, who did you put as your number one? Which pie was your number one favorite? Does anyone want to share a little bit more? That's there. Why is that?
Why?
Yes.
She's just such a progressive gal. I love that.
Amazing. That's a
Sweet,
great reason.
outgoing, you know.
Does anyone else want to share what was your number one favorite? Yeah?
I'd say cherry, because here I can pick cherries right in the neighborhood.
Oh,
They're
that's so
delicious
lovely.
and I'm supporting local farmers.
I love that. Anyone else up here?
I think heritage has a lot to do with it.
What was your number one favorite pie?
My apple.
Apple, there you go. Apple is a classic. All right, so now we are going to walk through the results. Tajane, can you open that up? All right, so in order for one of these pies to win, the pie needs to have a majority of support. So that means over 50% of the votes in order for that pie to be the winner. So we are going to open up the link just over here in a second to the results,
This is results.
the link that is open. If you stop sharing for a second.
Oh. Oh. So everything.
And if you can just screen share that.
Wow.
The tech issues, you know, Zoom in person, there's a lot that goes into it. All right, there we go. So go ahead and go to previous. So that we go to the first round. All right, perfect. So in order for one of these pies to win, like I said, they need to have 50% of the votes. So how does this process work with ranked choice voting? So after you rank the candidates in your order of preference, we are going to count the ballots in different rounds. In the first round, we are only counting everyone's first choice. So if I put Marion Barry as my number one choice, in the first round, that is what we are looking at. So here there was, oh, can you refresh that? Not seeing everyone else's votes. I'm the only one on there. There we go. So there were 8 total votes for chocolate cream pie. I'm a little surprised. There were 4 votes for apple pie, 3 votes for Marion Berry, and then 2 votes for cherry pie, 2 votes for pumpkin pie. So again, this is looking at who everyone's first choice was. The thing is that no one has a majority of the votes to win. So now we need to see who has the least amount of votes, and those candidates are going to be defeated. Whoever those voters marked as their next choice, their ballot now gets to count for their next choice. So rather than their vote just being wasted for the defeated candidate, they now have the ability to have their vote count for that next pie. So let's go to the next round. So here you can see that pumpkin pie and cherry pie were both eliminated. And so now chocolate cream pie has 10 votes. Apple pie has 5 votes. Marion Berry has 4 votes. So that's still not quite a majority. So let's go to the next round. And now Marion Berry was defeated because they had the least amount of votes. And ultimately chocolate cream pie takes it for the majority win.
We did it.
Yay! So I hope that was a really fun way for you to practice what it feels like to vote in a ranked choice voting election. I do really want to emphasize that ranking things can feel very intuitive, right? It's as easy as 1, 2, 3 when you're filling out the ballot, and the candidate does need a majority of the votes to get elected. That is not something that is required in the current system. So I always really like to emphasize that it does require the candidate to have broad support. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So why are you all here today? Thank you so much for being here. The reason that we have gathered is so that you all can take away some information about how ranked choice voting works, so that you can share this information with your networks, with your family, your friends, your neighbors. This is on the ballot for November 2024. And so we really need your help spreading the word about what ranked choice voting is and letting people know that this is on their ballot.
So do I pass this back?
Next slide. So why do we need a new system? Our current elections feel very discouraging. Both myself and Tajane talked about our own experiences, and I'm sure that folks here can agree, and you may have your own reasons for why you're frustrated with our current election system. So I would love to hear from 1 or 2 folks in the crowd. What is one of the reasons or one of the problems that you see with the current system? Does anyone want to share?
Now, but I have a question, go back to something you said. You said something about the majority, the person who has the majority wins, which is not true now, or something to that effect. But, I mean, it's not true for president, but isn't it true for most of them?
I will answer that at the end. I do want to get through the slide deck and then we will have time for that question. I will make a note of it. Does anyone want to share what a problem you think is with the current system?
Well,
Yeah.
I've been inclined a time or two to vote for the Green Party. I voted for Ralph Nader way back when, you know, and then that allowed a candidate, which I wouldn't have voted for ever, to win the election. So I'm not sure if I think that this would remedy that situation, but, yeah.
I heard someone up here say spoiler candidate. Do you want to talk a little bit more
Sure,
about that?
sure. And what would have happened is that Ralph Nader his votes would have gone to the next person up.
Exactly.
And so that probably would have gone to the more liberal candidate.
Yeah.
And that would have changed the outcome of the election.
Yeah, so the spoiler effect, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but if there's a candidate that either comes from a third party or if they share a similar platform with one of the other candidates, you may not feel like you should vote for them because you don't want your vote to be wasted. So I can definitely hear that feeling. I saw your hand back
Well, yeah,
there.
the other thing too is that, in those elections, you know, more people would have voted for Ralph Nader because they supported his thinking and Bev Stein too, when she ran. But if you cast your votes there, you know, there's a leading candidate that, that you vote for. If you can vote for all of them, you can vote your real preference. You know, and then it works out, and it's also a way for people looking at the voting to see the directions that the public actually thinks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great reason. I think, you know, even in the simplest form, feeling like you had more choice.
Yep.
Being able to walk away from an election and say, that felt good. I felt like I actually had my vote count, instead of walking away and feeling like, I don't like that person. I don't like that I voted for that person, but I felt like I had to. That is a feeling that we hear very frequently.
The middle item, candidates with powerful backers tend to win elections. That could be both positive and negative. And particularly in this climate, there's a lot of negative stuff that I can see that's going on with who and why candidates are being backed.
Yeah,
And so that would be a detriment for me if I find that there's a particular organization that's pushing the candidate forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anyone else? One more person that would like to share?
Another thing, it occurs to me, I mean, if parties are voting separately, you tend to get the most extreme candidates
Yeah,
on both sides. Whereas if everybody can vote for all of the candidates, you tend to get the more moderate candidates tend to rise to the top because they might be somebody's second, or they might be a lot of people's second choice.
yeah.
Instead of, few people's first choice.
Yeah, those are all such incredible points. And, we will have pie at the end and room for folks to just have conversations with one another. I know we could be here all night talking more about all of these different reasons. And thank you all so much for sharing. We will have some more time for that, but I would like to talk a little bit more about why our elections are discouraging. So I think you all said this right. There is a lack of meaningful choices. Voters feel pressured to vote for a candidate with the best chance of winning, or sometimes you're using your vote to vote against someone. It's not even that you want them to win, it's that you don't want them to win. And again, that's not a good feeling. Candidates with the most powerful backers also tend to win elections over the candidates that put our communities first. And lastly, candidates can have a lack of broad support. If there's a crowded race with 3 or more candidates, that can lead to the winning candidate having far less than a majority. And so that means that they're not truly reflective of most voters or most communities, which is not something that we want for our democracy. All right, so what is ranked choice voting? So ranked choice voting is a simple upgrade to our elections. And like you all did in that mock election activity, it allows you to rank the candidates in your personal order of preference. So you're able to say, again, this is my first choice, second choice candidate, and so on. And I do want to stress, voters are able to pick as few or as many of those candidates as they would like. It is already being used in over 50 places in the United States. In every level of government, from local city council elections all the way to statewide and federal elections. So 2 of the states that use it include Maine and Alaska. And I also want to say that it's already here in Oregon. There are different places here in Oregon that have adopted ranked choice voting. Benton County was the first place here in Oregon to use it, and they adopted it in 2016. They used it for the first time in 2020. More recently, the city of Corvallis adopted it in 2022. And then there are 2 other places here in Oregon. Multnomah County and the city of Portland very, very recently approved it in the November 2022 election. So why should we move to a different system, right? We talked about some of the problems with the current system, but how does ranked choice voting connect to that? How does ranked choice voting help to improve our democracy? So one of the most important things about ranked choice voting is that it's just giving voters more meaningful choices. Again, rather than feeling like you have to be strategic, you have a bigger range of being able to say, here are the candidates that I agree with. Here are the candidates that actually care about the things that my community or I personally am interested in. And so it's giving voters more power on their ballots. Another reason is that ranked choice voting can lead to better representation. In the places that have adopted ranked choice voting, we have seen that more women, more people of color, younger people, first-time candidates, they are all now able to successfully get elected to office. And so it's really paving the way for more diverse candidates, for more candidates that have different viewpoints, different opinions, and ultimately it's about the outcomes that really reflect our community and not only about the issues that special interests tend to care about. And I would like to show this image here. This is from the St. Paul, Minnesota City Council election, where they elected a city council with a majority of women of color, and they are all under 40. That does not happen without ranked choice voting. And so I think it is a good example that it can pave the way for more diverse candidates to actually win office.
If they're all under 40, is that diverse?
I think, that is a fair point. I think it's, definitely showing that this couldn't happen in any other system, but very, very good point. So it's also leading to better representation for women. So here, there is a case study by Represent Women. They are a national organization that looks at different election outcomes and how they impact women that are running for office. So what we're looking at here is that in the 100 largest cities in the United States, without ranked choice voting, women are only winning 33% of those seats to office, while men, on the other hand, are winning 67% of those seats. However, if you look at the elections for mayor that use ranked choice voting, women are able to secure 61% of those elections, and men have 39% of those elections that they are winning. So you're able to see that women have a better chance of actually getting elected into office, and being able to achieve gender parity is definitely something that is important to our organization and to so many other people here in the state of Oregon. So it's also leading to better representation for people of color, like I mentioned. This is an example in Salt Lake City, Utah. In 2021, they used ranked choice voting, and a majority of people of color that also identify as queer or as LGBTQ+ were able to win a seat to the city council. And so again, all of these different examples that I'm showing are really to highlight that with ranked choice voting, because voters are able to express their preferences and have their ballot counted for more than just their first choice, it's really allowing more of those diverse candidates to win. And I will also say, as a candidate, it is a system that is also positively impacting you, because not only do you have to secure first choice votes, you also have to care about second choice votes, third choice votes. And so as a candidate, you are more incentivized to really talk about the issues. What are the issues that people care about, rather than only focusing on attack ads, right? Right now we see it's a candidate versus another candidate, and they're not talking about the issues. They're only talking about themselves as individuals. And that's not the information that people want. We want to know, what are you doing when you're elected into office? What are the different policies that you're going to be championing? And so with ranked choice voting, because these candidates need a majority of the vote, you have to do the work to reach out to more than just your base. You have to go out and talk to more voters. You have to talk to more voters within your community and also outside of your community. So as we're thinking about, what does campaigning look like right now? It's not something that's always happening. I talk to people that say, no one ever comes to knock on my door. I don't get any of these mailers delivered to me. I don't know who's even running for office, right? What do they stand for? With ranked choice voting, it is really encouraging candidates and giving them an incentive to care about the majority of the voters. And again, not only their traditional base.
Question?
We will have questions at the end. So I also talked a little bit about this. Ranked choice voting does ensure broad support. So not only does this translate into the candidate actually having a majority of the voter support, right? It also translates into the policy that they're writing once they do get elected. So right now, I can think of a lot of issues that Oregonians broadly care about. I think that climate action is definitely one of those. Safeguarding our environment so that future generations and current generations are able to enjoy it, that's a priority for Oregonians. And we're not always seeing that actually match up with the policy that is being introduced. With ranked choice voting, it can ensure that the issues that are broadly supported are actually turning into action. There are actual policies that are being introduced on behalf of those different issues. And so in general, it really helps during the campaign, but even afterwards, it is a way to hold our leaders accountable so that they're able to do what they promised that they would do. All right, so I know we already went through this earlier, but I just wanted to go over this one more time. So again, here's an example ballot. Voters are able to rank the candidates in their order of preference, like I said. If no candidate reaches 50% or more of the vote, the candidate with the fewest votes is defeated, and the ballots are instantly counted for the voter's next choice. This process would keep repeating the same way that we did with the pie election until someone does have 50% or more of the votes. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the ballot this November. What does this ballot measure actually do? So if this is approved in November of 2024, the measure will establish the use of ranked choice voting for statewide and federal elections. So statewide elections include the governor, the secretary of state, attorney general, and so on and so forth. Federal elections include the US president as well as the US Congress. So I do want to be clear that this is only applying to the statewide and to the federal elections. And it will be used in both the primary and in the general elections. So in both of those, voters will now be able to use those rankings on their ballot. Another really cool thing about the measure is that it will help to standardize the way that local jurisdictions here in Oregon are implementing ranked choice voting. So like I mentioned, there are already 4 different places here in Oregon that have decided to adopt ranked choice voting. So although there are best practices nationally about how to implement ranked choice voting, in Oregon, they are still having to learn how to do that voter education, learn how to do that implementation. And so if we pass this at the statewide level, it will allow us to create those tools so that county clerks, so that the Secretary of State, so that local organizations, as they're implementing this and educating voters, they don't have to necessarily start from scratch, and they have those best practices here in our state to use. We also were very dedicated to including resources for voter education. Again, I think people can grasp how to use the rankings, but it was very crucial for us to ensure that there is resources so that the Secretary of State will be able to roll out a voter education plan for the entire state. And lastly, if this is passed, the first use of ranked choice voting will be in 2028. So there's a good amount of time so that our county officials are able to successfully implement this. That was absolutely one of our priorities. Most other places that have adopted ranked choice voting, they tend to implement it within a year. And although, you know, voters in those first elections do end up using the rankings and do understand it, we just wanted to be sure that here in Oregon, there's ample time for that to be successful. All right, so on this slide, you are looking at a lot of different logos of organizations. Currently, we have a coalition of over 40 supporting organizations. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of these different examples. So we do have the support of the State League of Women Voters of Oregon, which has been really incredible to have their support. We also have the support of the ACLU of Oregon, as well as other organizations like the American Federation of Teachers, as well as Veterans for All Voters, and youth-led organizations like Next Up. This coalition is definitely very diverse. The different communities that they represent are everything from working class people to people of color. There's really a broad range of the support that we're seeing here in Oregon. All right, so I know there were a lot of questions. I did want to prioritize the order of the questions. Can you remind me what your question was earlier?
And they would disallow the majority of the voters to win, and that's not done now.
Mhm.
I know that's true of presidential elections, but how about other elections?
Could you repeat the question?
Right.
Yeah, so the question was, currently candidates don't need a majority of the votes to win, and so she just wanted me to walk through that a little bit. Yeah, so there definitely are races where candidates are able to win with less than that. I cannot think of a specific example off the top of my head, but I can definitely get that to you. You know, it is just something we see in general as a trend across the country. I think because candidates can be very extreme, right? They can be on like one end or the other. We're not seeing as many moderate candidates. I think that's why in general they tend to get less than a majority of support because they're just not really catering to most voters. But I can definitely circle back and get some of those examples.
Wasn't the recent governor's race, that exact same situation? Because I don't think, Tina Kotek got 50%.
Yes, actually, I don't have those numbers memorized, but there were 3 candidates in that election, yeah. Yeah, so it's, when we looked at ranked choice voting for statewide races and federal races, we were really looking at races that had more than 3 candidates usually running for office, because that is where you tend to see the spoiler effect. Because again, it's a crowded race, there are more than 3. So we really wanted to see like which of these elections will benefit the most from having people rank those. Some of the state legislative races, they only have 1 or 2 candidates running, and so it wouldn't make as much sense to have voters rank those if there's only 2 candidates on the ballot. So having 3 or more candidates, like in the last governor's race, I think is definitely one of those examples. And you know, I think during that time, there definitely were folks that were campaigning and their strategy was like, vote for me so that your vote isn't wasted. I think that was one of the main ads that we saw out there, which that's, you know, not really something that voters want to see. But I can pull up those numbers for sure with the last governor's
The
race.
2016 presidential election is a good example.
Oh, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Ranked choice voting wouldn't have taken care of the problem.
So this is an initiative that you're trying to get on the ballot?
So it is already on the ballot. It was referred by the Oregon legislature in 2023. So it did go through the process of being vetted by different legislators. One of our biggest supporters was the former Speaker of the House, Dan Rayfield. We had the support of former Majority Leader Julie Fahey, legislators from across the entire state. So they did work on the policy and eventually they decided to refer it to the voters. So we're not gathering signatures. This is going to be on the ballot. So we really do want to stress for people that.
Is the ballot in November?
In November of 2024, correct? Yes. Yeah, you already see it.
The way I see this being most effective is people are going to really need to understand who the candidates are. They're going to really need to hear, as you say, from the candidates. The candidates are going to have to be aware of both local and statewide issues that are meaningful to the general population. That coupled with education, the public educating themselves as to who these people are and who they represent, and looking at the facts, because that's what I see is a lot is wrong with our voting right now. People tend to be emotional. They're all the way to the right, they're all the way to the left, and they don't, at least what I'm hearing, they don't have the facts of what needs to be looked at.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the state, how the state rolls this out in terms of the educational platform.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because with elections that have ranked choice voting, you do see more candidates running for office. So the pool of who's actually running will be a lot bigger. And I think you're right that people will want to know more about who's running for office. Is there anyone here that, again, genuinely does reflect me? Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this has bipartisan support, because I see that more women are elected. I know there is a section of our society who thinks that women should stay in the home and they don't believe there should be diversity or, you know, they don't want to talk about people of color and there's just so many things that you were saying that I believe in, but I know there's a section of our society that don't want to support those issues or talk about them or anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, is this a liberal, is this getting liberal support and not conservative support? Is it getting bipartisan support, ranked choice voting?
Yeah, so we have previously looked at polling here in Oregon that shows that a majority of voters do support ranked choice voting. So definitely want to lead with that because, you know, I think it's always important to look at what does the majority of the state really want the direction of our democracy to be. So there is majority support. Our coalition right now is growing every single day. And so we have the support of organizations like Tribal Democracy Project, the Rural Organizing Project, right? Reaching more rural voters. That is actively something that our effort is working on to ensure that we are not only focused on urban areas, right? We are really reaching out to voters in the entire state. And I think doing events like this is really powerful because everyone here, like you have the ability to go out and have those conversations, peer-to-peer education, peer-to-peer sharing. You know, this is why I personally care about the issue. I think that's the way that we will win this November. And so our coalition is definitely growing. I will say that, you know, at the moment, it is an issue that tends to have more support with specific audiences. However, the more education that we're able to do, I do think that people start to realize this benefits everyone. It truly does benefit everyone because it doesn't matter what political party you're registered to. With ranked choice voting, you would have a greater ability to mark your preferences for that political party, right? For the candidates running to represent that political party. And across the country, ranked choice voting is a nonpartisan issue. And so I will say definitely, you know, anything that you are taking away from here, we would really love for those conversations to continue. Is anyone online? Yeah.
There's a question from the chat. Independent voters don't get a say in primaries unless they registered Democrat or Republican. Will this change with ranked choice voting?
So with ranked choice voting, with this measure, it is not opening. Yes, so the question was if this is going to affect the way that independents are participating in the May primary. And this measure does not open the primary. So you do still have to be, you know, affiliated, registered to a specific political party to be able to participate in the May election. Okay. Any other online questions before?
One more.
Yeah.
Please explain how this works for both machine and human counting of ballots.
Ooh, that is a great question. So there is software for the calculations to happen instantly. There's different variations of that software that other places in the United States use. Every county is still going to count the ballots within their county. The ballots will not be transported anywhere. And all of that data from the rankings would then be centralized with the Secretary of State. So ultimately, the Secretary of State will be able to run that automatic runoff to see how the rankings and how those different rounds are going to produce a majority winner. So it's adding a layer of centralizing that data with the Secretary of State. And I will also say that, you know, right now with the different places that are already adopting it, like Multnomah County, Portland, they are in contact with different national resources like the Ranked Choice Voting Resource Center. They are a national organization that goes out and travels to different places across the United States to really answer the questions that elections officials and other folks have about that software. So the answer is it's used in over 50 places and we do have the technology to do that.
I have to admit, I didn't realize that there would still be primaries using this process. And I'm thinking the primary limits the party to one candidate from that party. So at this point, besides Democrats and Republicans, which parties have standing in Oregon in order to hold a primary? Because I know that the so-called, I think, independent party kind of came and went. I mean, is there even an option at this point to have 3 candidates go to the final November election?
I do not, I know that this applies to major political parties. I do not know which other ones qualify for that.
Good question.
Does anyone here?
5 candidates for the Democratic nomination for Secretary of State. But only one of them will win, and then your question, Jenny, if there's a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate that come from a primary, how's the ranked choice gonna work?
Well, but there's a Green Party, and so their candidate will be.
Yeah.
Right, and then whatever other parties, minor parties, those will still be in the race, and
Yes,
there'll be less
working
chance of a
families
spoiler.
Yeah.
Situation with a minor party.
Well, are you positive that the Green Party still has standing?
I think
Because
so.
that's.
They do.
Oh,
They
do?
did endorse ranked choice voting, so if that helps, yeah.
They do.
There's a lot of information about elections and, I just want to say thank you for your patience. Any questions that I feel like need more follow-up, I'm super happy to send out an email because I do want folks to walk away with the most information that you can.
Two questions. I thought that one of the slides said that this would pertain to state and federal elections.
Statewide.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so the question was, she thought it would apply to state and federal. It's to statewide. So any election that all voters in the state are voting for, like the governor.
Right. So it won't apply to like county elections or city elections.
No. So any local jurisdiction right now, they can already adopt ranked choice voting, like Benton County, the city of Corvallis, they have their own process to go through that. It's allowed within our constitution. This does not mandate any local jurisdictions to adopt it. It's only establishing it for the statewide and the federal.
Okay, and my other question then is, what states have implemented this statewide?
So there are 2 states that have it at the statewide level, and that includes Maine and Alaska. Yeah. So we would be the 3rd.
This question might be for Mr. Gomez, but is Douglas County considering anything like this?
No, we're still, with standard voting. Just to tap on what she said about statewide, the legislature that has dropped it to the ballot in November is not affected by RCV because they are not statewide races. Only, like she said, governor, treasurer, secretary of state and higher are going to be affected by RCV.
Senator.
Congress.
Yes, so a little tweaks, not statewide, yeah.
Why didn't the primaries get included?
So there was a question online, why did the primaries not get included? I will say wait, do they mean why was a primary not opened, actually? I'm confused. by that.
Possibly, it just says, I can ask. for
Right, yeah,
clarification.
can you ask for clarification, because it will be used in both the primary and the general. Any other questions in the room?
If we were to institute this, Douglas County Commissioners are nonpartisan. And typically, there's 5 to 7 candidates. And I can see how ranked choice voting would be really beneficial, but how would we bring that into Douglas County? Do we have to have an initiative in Douglas
To
County?
bring it to the county level?
Yeah.
Every county has their own process. So, going through the ballot is definitely one of those options. I'm not from Douglas County, so I cannot fully speak to that. Are you able to elaborate on that by any
Either,
chance?
the commissioners refer it to the ballot or the voters do an initiative?
Yeah, so those are the two pathways. And, you know, at the city level, we have seen it adopted through a couple of different forms, like charter reform. That's how Multnomah County adopted it. They went through a charter review process and looking at the Constitution, and they adopted it through that mechanism. It did get referred to the voters though, but it was as a charter amendment. So I think there are a couple of different ways, but the other two are the most common.
Only 9 of the 36 counties are charter counties. And so Douglas is not one of them.
Got it. There you go. Yeah. It's always fascinating having these conversations because, you know, you think about all the different levels of government and there's just so much information for all of these. So, you know, really appreciate everyone sharing your insight. I really like this to be a learning space for all of us. I'm learning from you all, you're learning from me. It's been such a great discussion. I will say that we do have monthly events as well. We have 3 events that happen every month. They are virtual, so not in person. But if there's a question that you feel like you will, you know, didn't fully get an answer to or want more information about a specific thing, very happy to have that sent over via email so you can register for one of those trainings. The goal of today was really to get you a foundational understanding of what is the thing that people keep talking about, right? So I hope you're walking away with a better sense of, you know, what does this actually look like? What are some of the places that use it?
I'll defer to the question if it's been, the online question, that has it been modified to?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, there was just some confusion, but.
Did it get answered?
Yes.
Okay,
Oh, okay.
We're still working.
awesome.
Well, my question is this, I don't want to complicate things too much, but I know that there's another process called star voting. And, Eugene is going to be
Yeah.
voting on whether to use that in their municipal elections. And I heard someone speaking about it on the radio on Think Out Loud just yesterday. They had an interview, I think it was yesterday, with a gal who, a woman who is leading that
Mhm.
effort. And I'm still a little perplexed about why people like that better as opposed to this better. So I guess what I'd like to know from you is there something I can say to someone? If, what's the advantage of ranked choice voting over star voting, in
Yeah.
your opinion?
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't heard about star voting, it is an Oregon concept. So it was, you know, created here in Oregon. It hasn't not been used for any certified election. So I do want to be very clear about that. It has been used for internal party elections, but not any government certified elections. And the way that star voting works is different. Instead of ranking the candidates, you give them ratings. So think about like a Yelp review, right? You go to a restaurant, you give them 0 to 5 stars. That's the way that star voting works. And there is a local initiative in Eugene. You know, as a coalition, we don't have a position on star voting. We are really focused on making sure that ranked choice voting does win this November. However, I would say if people want more information about that, I think, you know, with ranked choice voting, it is tested. Again, we have over 50 places across the country. So we know what works when educating voters. We know what works when it comes to the technology, right? There are all of those national resources to make sure that it is a success. And I think in my eyes, that's one of the biggest differences.
I think this is something you may or may not have on the tip of your tongue, but I know that besides the places where it's used in this country, ranked choice voting has
It's
been
used
used
globally,
in many
yes.
other countries.
Yes, so that is such a fun fact. I'm glad you brought that up. So ranked choice voting is not only within the United States. Ireland is a perfect example of another country that uses it. Australia is another great example. Scotland is another great example. Across the country and in the globe as well, we do see that people use ranked choice voting. So not only do we have those best practices here for the US, but also from those other places.
Can I make one final point?
Yes,
The closed primaries is a really touchy topic, and independents are mad. We would vote. But there's something that's very important to remember. The primaries are when precinct committee people are elected to their parties. And only elected precinct committee people can vote to choose the new leadership after the general election. By law, they must. What this does is it prevents a charismatic chair of a party, either Democrat or Republican, appointing a bunch of people that are buddies to precinct committee people to vote them in. And so it's very important. And we've just seen issues in the Republican Party where elected precinct committee people got involved. And those elections for precinct committee people are extremely important to the reorganization and the revitalization of the political party. It's not that big a deal to register to be in a party. And the only difference it makes is you can vote in the primary. You can have any belief you want, but it's a delicate topic, but it's important that people realize that the reason it's closed is so only Democrats can choose their new leadership. Only Republicans can choose their new leadership.
yeah, thank you so much for, oh, yeah,
I kind of tag on to what Richard was saying is just because only the two major political parties have enough strength of numbers to be authorized to have their own ballot, doesn't mean that the 7 minor political parties don't have the same opportunities, but they have an internal primary, which is not on a ballot, but they still have the opportunity to choose who will move forward and represent them at the November general. It's not on a ballot, it's internal.
got it. That's very helpful to know. All right, well, I know that was a lot of, lots of questions and answers. If you feel like you still have more questions, I am happy to share my contact information with folks. I do want to get to the last few slides before we head out. Just wanting to go over a couple of takeaways. If there's anything that you do leave this meeting with, I hope that it is that you believe ranked choice voting is simple and easy to use, and that it is an improvement to our elections, and that ultimately we're here because people are deeply frustrated and this gives people more choice. And lastly, it is leading to more reflective outcomes. And, we do hope that this November you vote yes on ranked choice voting. Happy to have more opportunities for folks to learn. But again, thank you so much for all your participation. And lastly, I will say that if you are here in this meeting and you feel compelled to volunteer, if there's any other way that you would like to get involved, there are definitely those opportunities. We are recruiting folks to host a house party. A house party is a very informal gathering for people in your network, in your community, to learn more about ranked choice voting. So if you have the space, or if there's a coffee shop, a small business that you would like to host a house party at, we do have a toolkit for people to be able to do that. If you're interested in tabling at an event, that is definitely always welcome. And then lastly, just talk to your folks, talk to people that you know about this. I think having those conversations really matters a lot. And I will pass it back to the league folks.
Okay, well, could I drop something in there? Thank you. We would like to thank you, our
Yes.
speakers. Of our appreciation. They came all the way from Portland today, which is a bit of a long trip, and we really appreciate that they came to our neck of the woods here.
I love it.
Please stay afterwards for pie, which is served in the back, and visit with each other, talk things over, express what's on your mind. Also, please check out our table on the side. These are hot off the press, the League of Women Voters Voters Guide to the primary election. Help yourself, take one for a friend if you'd like to. These are free and supported by donations to get them printed. And candidates do not pay to be in this, all right? So it's different than the one you get from the state where they do. So this is researched and put together by league members, and it's nonpartisan information for you. And then, so again, you can sign up if you'd like to join our mailing list, our emailing list, and I want to thank Robin Wisdom for all her effort organizing this. I should also just go ahead and introduce our other board members, since we actually are operating on just a non-presidential kind of model. We don't have like officers, we're just a group working together, and that's Robin Wisdom.